You stayed here in this world to save your child. So have I.
What is up, guys? My name is BobaTalks. Welcome to my Westworld Season 2 Episode 9 breakdown. Now, this episode was just insane. So a majority of this episode spent time focusing on Williams. This party that was held for William, just kind of celebrating, I think, him and his name. Because obviously in the real world, what we have to remember is he was kind, he was generous, and he was seen as this great guy. But underneath, what we know from the man in Westworld, he was this absolute treacherous, unspeakable kind of person. I love how in this episode William, and I believe this was spoke about at the beginning of the episode, he talks about the stain that has always been there, and unbeknownst to William that she was actually awake when he was saying this to his wife when she was drunk, supposedly asleep in bed, and how the only person who was able to see it, because it was invisible to everyone, this tiny flicker of darkness as William calls it, was his wife. It was just really hard to watch in a good way in this episode. His wife just conduct herself. She was this lady who turned into a drunk. We learned that from Emily as well, William's daughter. And ultimately this all kind of kicked off when she called William a, effing virus. And, she said first it was my brother Logan, and then her father, and now it's her. This is like she has been, how do I put it, corrupted by this stain that William is, and how he comes in, how he came in the family house, and how he consumed it from the inside out. The thing is, the whole time in this episode, it was very interesting. William was just being very patient and kind of kind to her, which is obviously the kind of opposite in the way that he is in Westworld and the way he conducts himself. But the reason why I think he was acting this whole way towards his wife the whole time is that not only anyway is he a nice guy in the real world, and he's a pretender. That was a huge word this episode, because I think he can agree more than anyone, more than his wife, that he is this stain. And I absolutely loved that line he gave to his wife, and how he said he didn't even see this stain at first, and then one day it was there. And then we got these amazing shots, of just flashing back to season 1, where we saw the young William putting on the man in black hat. It was so interesting to hear him say that it was what he was underneath all along. But he did try to do great in the world, where he's faithful, generous, kind, and he even tried to build a wall to an extent to protect Emily and his wife. But she saw through it. She's been the only one to see through it, and as I was just mentioning a second ago, he literally said the words, "And for that I am truly sorry, because everything you feel is true." And interestingly enough, right before this, he put his profile in that book, and now this profile is just came from Ford earlier on in the episode. I absolutely love how much Ford is in the ending of this season. But anyway, this was very important because obviously Ford and William were talking about this little project that William had been doing all of these years. It was so funny when William said to Ford, what is Oz doing without his wizard? But the important matter of this conversation is that Ford said, when was the last time you looked at your little project and what it's been collecting? And then we got that interesting line as well, in terms of this isn't a game, Robert, or something like that. And then Ford said, I think perhaps one final game, William, and that takes us back to the beginning of this season when we had the young Robert Ford, and that is when this whole game began for William in this episode. But weaving throughout all of these flashbacks, as Westworld famously does, we kept going back to present day, when obviously from the last episode William got shot God knows how many times, and he was being taken care of by Emily, his daughter. And now, I definitely questioned this in my last breakdown, but what is there something more to her caring? And in this episode that got revealed. She went on to say, "I'm your daughter pretending to give a shit about you," and how when all of this is done with, she's got to expose that research project and everything that William has done in the past, all of this stuff that is created through collecting guest data to make hosts from guests and all kinds of things like that would be exposed, and ultimately she would just love to be able to lock him up. I really loved the twist of how Emily read her father's profile and literally saw all of those things that, when we saw William's wife seeing all the things that he did in Westworld through his profile, and the fact that Emily saw this as well, since when she was asleep she faked it and she saw that William put it in the books, left it to Emily. So this is really an ultimate revenge for the family, for Emily on behalf of her mother. We learned that any kindness she kind of gave him was just out of trying to learn a bit more about the Forge, huge place that William created to collect guest data, and she just wants to destroy it. Now, talking of twists as well, I honestly didn't expect this, and it was just really sad. I do not think that Emily is dead. even though that was very, very powerful, and perhaps it should even stay that way, I've got a feeling they might be saving it until that final episode, or you know, we'll have to wait and see there. But the reason why William really persisted about this all being Ford, you know, we've heard in previous episodes, William thought that Emily might be a part of Ford's game, you know, basically built right down to the last detail. And the biggest piece of evidence for him that all of this, it must be a part of the game, is because he never told anyone about his profile, and unbeknownst to him, obviously that was left to Emily by her mother, since she knew exactly where William hid it. So that is just insane. I like how we didn't get all the details at one point in the episode. It kind of, you know, got built upon up until the point where we found out, oh, okay, that's how Emily got her profile. And just imagine watching your dad do all those things. You know, we literally saw from the first episode where William was dragging Dolores into the barn. It was just insane. Now, throughout the episode as well, we saw that William kept looking at his arm. Now, this kind of made me think a few times, okay, did he kind of get some kind of illness, and was he considering making a copy of himself, much like Logan's father? But then we got that moment where William was about to kill himself, because he kind of did realize that he shot his daughter, which is just, you know, couldn't be any more tragic, really. But he doesn't go through killing himself, and we were getting a commentary at the same time, or something along the lines of saying, you know, were any of these choices ever truly mine to begin with? And he was about to cut his hand open. I think ultimately, to find out, I think if he was a host, or if he was a copy of himself, and maybe Ford had been making him do these things all the time, you could come up with all kinds of crazy theories that, you know, did Ford actually create William all along to, you know, make sure Delos, because if we remember back to the early history of the park, he could have used William or a host of William to, you know, get on board with James Delos and then eventually take over, and then, you know, kind of be his own character. Maybe there was that William from season 1, and that he still used that base personality to kind of give him that way in, and just Ford has kind of given him this narrative to basically accomplish and become the head of Delos and stuff like that. But I don't know, guys. Do you seriously think he is a host, or do you think that Westworld season 1 he was that person and everything like that, but then he decided to put himself into his project when it became successful, unlike James Delos? There's loads and loads of theories here that you could go on about. Now, the Dolores stuff in this episode was really heavy as well. Obviously, starting at the beginning, Ghost Nation did not want her to go to the Valley Beyond. I really liked how Teddy let one of the main guys go from the previous episode, and I believe when Dolores said there is no place for you in the new world, that was that clip that was played back from when they you know, opened up one of the Indians' heads in episode 1, I believe, and they played back the recording, and we saw Dolores shoot the Indian, saying there's no place for you in the new world. Let me know if I'm right there. I'm pretty sure that ties up to the beginning of Westworld season 2. But then Teddy talking to Dolores, man, I mean, God, that was just so heartbreaking, and the way this was shot as well. But let's talk about this first. He was remembering being brought online, remembering loving her, and at first I thought maybe he wanted to stop her because she had changed into something that it kind of defeated the point, or just made them the same as, if not, you know, the people who created them. Because what we can't forget is that she essentially reprogrammed Teddy. What happened to them? They got programmed. They got made to do things and play narratives. So Dolores has become somewhat of a monster of her own making. So yeah, for a second there, I did think maybe he wanted to stop her, but then it kind of broke my heart when he wanted to shoot himself so he wouldn't become a monster himself anymore. That line he said when he was just like, what's the use if we just become as bad as them? So then he shot himself, and that was just, Jesus, guys, that was just, no. Is this really it for Teddy? Is this really it? What we can't forget as well, we really can't forget this, is that he was in, well, the Valley Beyond waters. How did he get there? Would he really just be flopped in there? I just don't know. I don't know. There could be loads of reasons as to why he was there at the beginning of, you know, the future timeline at the beginning of this season. So let me know your thoughts there too. Now, as for like the Westworld HQ stuff, let's start with good old Charlotte, man. I can't stand that lady. But what they've done is essentially copied that code from Maeve, and how she has the ability to essentially use the Force and, you know, communicate with other hosts and even give them commands. She's basically accessed code that she's not meant to be able to do. And they've essentially copied that over to Clementine, who now has the ability to control other hosts. They've replicated that in her, and it just created mad violence. It was just, wow, that was just insane, that scene. And it's kind of freaky what they want to use this for. Maybe they want to weaponize this against the other hosts as well. I felt pretty sorry for Bernard in this episode. He really wanted to get Ford out of his head, because Ford was playing I'm not sure if he was playing a game necessarily, but he said that Elsie was going to betray him. And what happened? Elsie was just being, herself, sweet, and just, collected the ammo. And when she came back, if anything, the thing that she got scared of is that Bernard, tied himself to the driver's wheel of the car. So she picked up that maybe he was going to hurt her. But do you know what I mean? Like, there was no danger there. But is Ford really gone for good? Because Bernard was going through deleting this, deleting that, and then all of a sudden gone. Maybe he just made himself seem like he was gone. But regardless, Bernard had to drive off because he didn't trust himself, just in case, Ford is still there. I wouldn't be surprised if Ford is still there. I definitely think Ford was pushing Bernard to a point of where he wants him to be, because he said that Bernard is the one to fix, a lot of these things of what is to come, and may even be the only one. And lastly, let's talk about Ford and Maeve. That was just a really wonderful scene. Now, even though we can see Ford in many different ways, a kind of cool kind of guy, this kind of master, like the wizard himself, even the guy who pulls all of the strings, he does have this side to him, which completely came out in this moment with Maeve. I love how he explained how he had a different story in mind for Maeve. She was meant to kind of run away at the end of season 1, riding to freedom far away from here. And ultimately it was meant to be a tale of escape, especially once she had awoken. And then we got that drop where she said of all the hosts that he's made, Maeve was his favorite. And this moment was just so moving, because he was actually crying. And he even revealed that she was as close as he had ever got to having a child. I think he was really proud of the fact that he underestimated her as well, because she stayed in the world to protect her child when the tale of escape was meant to happen, and she was meant to get out into the real world. And he couldn't just let her lay there and die. So in his words himself, he said that she came so far, there's still so much of her story left to tell, and it'd be a shame to let them end it here, so don't let them. And that is when we saw on the tablet, it said unlocking core permission. So she is now got to become a fully fledged Jedi Master. There's a couple of screenshots from the trailers that show off the rest of the season, and we see her, like, I think in this image here. You see what I mean? She's like fully fledged in the Force now, with these core permissions. God knows what she'll be able to manipulate or do with all of this new code that she has access to. But anyway, guys, that is my breakdown. Absolutely incredible episode. There's so much to talk about now. Was the Man in Black a host all along? I just don't want to believe that. I want to believe that William in season 1 was a human. Whether he became a host along the way, whether that was a result of him embarking on his own project, I have no idea. But God, there is just a million and one questions to answer, guys. So I want to leave it to you guys. But apart from that, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like on it if you got this far in the video. Of course, I want to say thank you to my patrons. Check out the links in my description to my social media, to my Patreon page, and everything else. Stay up to date with more Westworld videos just like this. Be sure to subscribe. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.